Hey guys, this is Jessica and Noam here at Trax with Reverb for another episode of What's That Sound? And today we are recreating one of the most requested songs we've ever had. It's Are You Mine by the Arctic Monkeys.
Ross Orton produced it. Matt Helders played drums. It is so fat and gushy and dry and powerful. We're gonna figure out how they did it.
For our drums, we used our 70s vintage Gretsch kit and a Ludwig Superlight snare, and I put a big fat snare drum puck on there to muffle it. And then for our cymbals, we used K-Dark Zildjian hi-hats, and then both K-Dark crash cymbals, an 18 and a 20-inch.
All right, so for this drum sound, there is not a ton of like smoke and mirrors that goes into it. Lots of drum sounds, there's like some significant trick. There isn't a really significant trick here. It's just doing a really, really good job of recording this stuff accurately. Making sure that all of the EQs are in balance, making sure that we're not over compressing stuff. We are gonna go through all the mics and then we'll talk about what processing we did. It's not super extensive. And then we have one like low end trick that we actually did do that's gonna help really solidify our low end. Let's take a look. So let's check out our kick microphones. On this, we used a D12 microphone. It's a really vintage, classic kick drum mic, right? It kind of sounds vintage and like fully baked without doing anything to it. And kick out mic is a Sennheiser 421, really good dynamic microphone with a lot of body. It's also a really classic mic, and the combination of those together is gonna create this really well-balanced kick drum sound. The kick in microphone, we filtered pretty heavily. We took all the low end out of it, right? Because the whole focus on this is we want the kick drum to feel as big as it can possibly feel without being unwieldy, right? Without having a sound that we can't control. So in order to get that, we filtered out some of the low frequencies out of everything but our kick out microphone, and we let that be the only source of low end on this drum sound, so it's really focused and really clean. So here's our kick in microphone. Very punchy. We're doing a little bit of EQ on this just to add a little bit of punch to it, but it's a pretty basic sound, right? It doesn't have low end, right? We're filtering everything above like 300 or something like that. It's gonna serve a really specific purpose, which is punching that kick drum out of the mix. So let's check out what the kick out sounds like. All low end, all body. Really good sound on its own. We did a little bit of EQ on this. We're adding some 60 hertz onto it. We're taking away a bit of like 500 hertz, a bit of that like honky knock that is making it feel boxy. You'll also notice that we're gating this drum, right? That is partially because we were getting some cymbal bleed that we didn't want, but it is also for the trick that we're gonna use on this, which is the Chad Blake kick drum trick, which is running it through a Sans amp. We've done this before in other videos that Chad Blake mixed. It's like his signature sound. We've done it with the pedal. Today we're gonna just do it with the plugin just to see if there's any difference and see what that sounds like. Here's our snare top. This is a Bear Dynamic 201. We use that microphone because they are hypercardioid, right? Which means that it's not gonna give you as much hi-hat bleed as like a 57 would, right? It's gonna get more of that out because the polar pattern is really tight and it picks up in a more narrow pattern. It also, you should note that it picks up a little bit behind it as well, right? So you have to be really careful about where you are placing that microphone. You want to make sure that you're not sticking the back of the mic directly into the hi-hat because it'll pick up a little bit of that too. But it is a balanced drum sound and it's gonna work really well today because we wanna jack this snare up and really have it forward and not have a ton of hi-hat in it as well. On that processing wise, we are distorting it, right? That is a big part of this sound is distortion. So we're using some distortion. We're using our Sans amp and we're also using a decapitator, right? The Sans amp is in parallel, so that is we're bringing up a Sans amp next to the dry signal, right? So we're getting the kind of best of both worlds. The decapitator, we're just pushing it in series, so we just have a plug-in on the channel, and we're just pushing it a little bit just to get a little bit of extra character, a little bit of extra grit out of it. With this drum, the main thing is the tuning. That's what makes this drum sound the way that it is, right? It's not the processing, it is how we tuned it, how we dampened it to make sure that it didn't have overtones, and it's slightly EQ'd just to add a little bit of low end, but more than anything, it's just tuned really, really well. Here's our snare top. All right, let's check out our snare bottom. This was a AKG 414. It's a small part of this sound, but it's adding just like a little extra sizzle and it's just making it kind of get that extra brightness that we would have to push our high end too far on our top mic in order to get, so the bottom mic kind of helps. These are just great sounding toms. That's the biggest thing, is just making sure that they're perfectly in tune, making sure that there's not too much ring. Then the last step of the equation is we are gating these toms, right? What they actually probably did is they probably went in by hand and chopped up all of the toms so that the only time that you heard the tom mics was when the toms were actually being hit. The reason that people do that is because there's so much resonance in these toms, right? That any other drum around them is gonna create this kind of humming resonance, that it's a pitched thing, right? It's gonna be pitched with the tom and it's just gonna be constantly there. And when you're thinking about just this added noise that's going on in the track, that is all wasted energy. We only have so much energy that we can put into a track, and when this low end from these toms is eating up energy, that's gonna limit what we can do when we're mastering the track because we have a bunch of wasted space. So cutting that out makes it really clean. These particular toms have a lot of low end. We're adding some 100 hertz to them and making sure that they're really, really massive, and the only way that we can possibly do that is if we cut out all the stuff in between. All right, let's listen to the overheads. Overheads are pretty straight up, not much going on. We're giving a little bit of compression with our SSL, and past that, they're pretty much just kind of what they are. We filtered off some of the super lows so that it didn't interfere with our kick drum at all. Past that, it's just cymbals. Let's check out our room mic. These are AEA 840s. They're really great ribbon microphones. We had them spaced out wide so that they didn't get too much of the kick drum condensed in the middle, right? We kind of wanted them to be like extra mics. We did not want these room mics to be like the main part of the sound. Because of all the energy in this drum set, you are expecting that the room mics are a huge, huge part of it. They're actually not. They're not as loud as, let's say, if we were doing like a 90s rock record or something, right? This drum recording is surprisingly tight given how punchy and how energetic it feels. On the drum bus, there's kind of a lot going on, right? That is a big part of this sound, and we stacked a lot of processing. I'm gonna run you through it really quickly. If you wanna go in detail on it, you can check out the blog. I'm gonna put all of the specific settings so you can really dive in. On the bus, we did some EQ to get rid of some of the mid-range. We did a few different things for the dynamics of this sound. We added some parallel compression. We did a few envelope followers, right? So we used Waves Trans-X and we used Waves Smack Attack, and both of those were adding transients to this sound just to add some extra punch. We used a decapitator, and that was to crunch things up and kind of dirty it a bit. Lastly, we used a MIC DSP multiband processor, right? This, again, is a very specific Chad Blake thing that he does a lot. It allowed us to control these drums so that they're really, really specific where the frequencies were jumping out at different times, and so that no frequency would jump out way more for one snare than for another snare, and that the kick was the same every single time. All these parameters that if we're processing frequency-specific compression, we can really, really control it. So the last finishing touch, we put a little bit of reverb on the snare drum. We did that with a EMT 140 plate. Let's listen to the whole thing together. That is how we got the Arctic Monkeys' Are You Mine drum sound.
Please let us know in the comments what other songs you'd like to hear us break down, and if you've been using our sample packs, please link your songs so we can hear them. We'd love to know how you've been using them, and we'll see you next time.